Welcome to the I Am Capable podcast. I'm your host, Alex Gilbert, CEO, founder, and coach of Capable Consulting. I was diagnosed with dyslexia and ADHD at the age of 8, and since then, I've navigated school, work, and leadership through a lens of neurodiversity, allowing me to create a set of strategies and insights to help neurodiverse professionals thrive. Tune in each episode for real-life scenarios, tools that bridge the gap between employees and employers. If you're a company leader, fostering inclusion, or a neurodiverse professional seeking support, then you are in the right place. Through this podcast, we'll grow together and explore what it means to have work be challenging and not hard. Let's break down the stigmas, boost productivity, and celebrate the strengths that help you feel empowered to say, I am capable. Welcome back to the I Am Capable podcast. I'm your host, Alex Gilbert. I'm so excited that you are back to talk about what neurodiversity looks like kind of in a whole picture. Because a lot of the times when I talk to clients and I'm starting off talking about work-related things when it comes to their ADHD or their learning disabilities, they often kind of sneak into, can you also help me with things at home because I'm really struggling with X, Y, or Z? And every time I laugh, I was like, so you mean you don't take a light switch and just flip it on and off and say like somehow your work-related stuff doesn't affect you at home? I'm constantly talking to people about the fact that we are whole people, and where our ADHD or learning disabilities kind of show up in our everyday dynamic really not only reflects who we are as people, but how it kind of creeps into everyday life. And it's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It's just kind of how we are. We think differently. Our minds work in very different ways. And often we're sitting here thinking, what's wrong with me? But we're navigating a world that's different than the one that really exists for everybody else. Again, not necessarily a bad thing, but it makes it a little more dynamic and fun. I've constantly set my clocks and my reminders to be like blaring in my face. I was just telling the story before I got in here, how I was so nervous about forgetting one item for this podcast recording, and I set 6 different reminders last night and tonight and had every option available to me because, again, I don't switch off the switch to say, I don't have ADHD, I'm not going to forget this. But of course, that's how it runs. So today, so I don't forget all the things that I said I was going to talk about, I've invited Carissa here, who's again one of my team members, who is going to help us really kind of talk about how the fact that having learning disabilities, ADHD, and navigating a world of neurodiversity really impacts our entire life and how that is going to show up in different ways. So Carissa, thank you so much for coming back.
Thank you for having me, Alex. And now I am hoping that I don't forget anything either. But between the two of us, I'm sure we can get it done. But I personally really love this conversation, kind of looking at the whole person, right? And I think when a lot of people hear the word neurodiversity, kind of the first things that come to the average person's mind is maybe the word autism, right? Or maybe just thinking, well, this person thinks differently from me, but not really understanding that like neurodiversity is a full spectrum of natural brain variations, right? And that it's a full spectrum in the way that it looks. And then in each individual's life, it's also a full spectrum, right? Like you were saying, at work versus home, or with your kids versus your friends, right? For the most part, it's invisible, right? So it can be a little difficult for others to spot and also to spot within yourself, right? So why do you think recognizing and understanding that this is a spectrum is so important?
I think the reason we have to think about this as a whole spectrum is because of how it shows up as adults, especially because we've been trained up into this point to live a very structured life. When things become very unstructured, things that might have affected us in one way growing up or not at all are showing up in very different ways, especially when it comes to scheduling. I often talk to people about how they'll tell me they have an appointment and it's at 4:00, but they are sitting in waiting mode all day until 4:00 because they cannot miss that 4:00 appointment because somehow they're going to forget that all time exists, or they'll get hyper-focused on something else. That maybe not have been an issue when they were in a school structured environment and somebody else picked them up. But now as an adult and you are the one responsible, it kind of shows up and you're like, oh no, don't forget the appointment. You won't be late. And somehow you might have forgotten your pen and paper to that appointment. But don't worry, you got there on time.
I even personally have experienced that waiting mode, which is such a difficult thing to kind of break out of. But I think even within this spectrum, um, certain things that may be challenges to the neurodiverse person or to the people around them may also be skills, or there may also be skills that accompany those challenges, right? And I think there's something really important about appreciating the differences in people and appreciating their different abilities. So, how do you feel like when we kind of get into this mode of actually appreciating people and appreciating the different skills and abilities they bring to the table? And including them and valuing them rather than just kind of acknowledging them and saying, okay, well, this is there and they're different, right? How does that make an impact, like once we actually turn that into appreciating?
I'm going to give you this example, and Samantha, who will eventually be listening to this, is going to laugh at me when I use this example. But we often talk about the things that are really bothering us and that are really frustrating to us. And I think you bring up a great point. How do we really kind of embrace how people are thinking and doing things differently? People who are neurodiverse have this very big picture thinking. Think of all the little details. And I had just come back from a trip, and I was telling Samantha that not only was I anticipating all the things of when we were coming back from a trip, of what my kids were going to need, what I was going to need, and how I was going to set myself up for success the next day. She was like, "You did what?" So I will tell you. And when I come back from a trip, I pre-order my groceries to get delivered to my door the night I get back or the morning that we get there, because my kids don't really know why we don't have snacks or milk or all the things that they need the first thing in the morning. I have always set my meetings to be later in the afternoon the day after I get back, because I want to unpack all of my stuff. I even set reminders I'm not in the room with one, so I will say with Alexa, to have all of the things that I know I'm going to forget to put in their backpacks the next day, or things that I might need for myself. Those are all preset before I even walked in the door to get us ready for the next day, to kind of transition into that. And when I told Carissa that, she goes, "I am so ordering groceries next time we come back." That was so smart. And just being able to talk about it and have her not judge me in the process of what I was doing made it really easy for me to say, well, if you're open to more tips about how I have navigated the world to make me feel less anxious, to make me feel more together, and kind of get ahead of all of the challenges that I've had, as opposed to coming from behind and feeling like I'm never really succeeding. Those skills are things that I've built my entire life, trying to anticipate any challenge that has come. It does come with some anxiety. It's probably a trauma response in some ways, but it's also skills that I've been able to build into my everyday life that are going to be helpful for other people. And so when we're talking about this, we're talking about skills that other people have that come so natural to us. We don't even know that they're natural to us because we've just been doing it. You don't know that other people don't think that way. So when you are opening yourself to conversations with people without judgment, I think you're going to open yourself up to a whole new world of possibilities as well.
Yep. And I'm sure that the people that are around you that get to experience the comfort of having groceries the next day, right? Or the just the kind of greatness of that moment, right? Are go into that mode where they're like, wow, I appreciate this so much. Like, I personally didn't have the skills or the process to think of doing these things.
Yeah, and it isn't even just the everyday life of that. It's how much you're implementing in your ideas in the world. I mean, we have different perspectives and innovations that come from different line of thinking. So if you're already open to those conversations, the world is your oyster.
That's awesome. Well, speaking of conversations, we actually have a question from a viewer. We're going to head into the next segment called See It Through My Eyes. And we have a question from Manon, who has kind of a problem on her hands that I think a lot of people are experiencing, which is addressing yourself as that whole person. You don't switch off a light between work and home. So let's listen to that question from Manon.
Hi, my name is Manon, and I'm 23 and from Canada, currently living in Spain, teaching English at high school. My question more so surrounds doing work outside of work. So, I thrive on routine. The job I have currently is very set schedule because it's working in a high school, so I clock in, I clock out. I'm really good at getting work done in work hours and not having to do it outside of work. But my issue comes more so when I get home and I'm really tired, and then I remember I have all these other obligations that aren't work obligations, but still things I have to do. And in some ways, are actually more important. This can look like anything from, grocery shopping or looking at my visa and my budget and seeing how my spending has gone for the month, or general financial awareness, or applying for maybe any government paperwork I have to do as a person who lives outside of the country and is an expat in Spain. Maybe if I have housing stuff like, specific rent I have to be paying or that kind of stuff, or just general things I have to manage in my life that aren't work related. I get really overwhelmed really quickly and I kind of crumble and avoid. And then that, of course, is a spiral, which means that I don't do it and then it becomes worse for me and then I stress out more and it overall just becomes really overwhelming. And I'm really tired of that being an issue. I'd rather be constantly a little bit aware of the things I have to do in this back and forth cycle of avoiding and then extremely anxious and thinking about it all the time. So my question is, what is a way in which I can better maintain the work I have to do outside of work? Thank you so much.
That's a great question. Honestly, I think about this question all the time because a lot of times when people are talking about why am I able to make things happen at work and not make things happen at home, I come back to this whole mentality of work is hard, but you are masking all this time to make it possible, and home is safe. Safe where you can unpack, unmask, do the things that you're only accountable to yourself. So it feels like that's the stuff that can kind of let go by the wayside. But it's exhausting to set yourself up for work all of the time and be perfect and be that rock star and have nothing go out of place. When it comes to the work stuff versus the home stuff, I would say you have to give yourself some grace. I always build in some kind of transition to go from work to home, to kind of unpack, to unmask, to give yourself that space to decompress before you jump into anything that is hard. And hard is 90% of the things that are at home. A lot of the responsibilities at home are things that are completely uninteresting. All of the tasks that you just mentioned in terms of cleaning and bills and, keeping up with doctor's appointments or anything like that are the things that you have been trying to avoid the whole time. So I try and implement as much kind of AI, to be honest, into that dynamic, kind of breaking down the tasks that feel more tangible. So you're not doing every one of those tasks at once, but you're really breaking down the task into manageable things. So if you are going back and forth with, let's say, ChatGPT or Perplexity or Google Gemini, that you can set up so it's sending you reminders of today you said you were going to look at your budgets, or sending you an update every morning at this time to say what you have on your agenda to do at home. You said you were going to pick up your groceries at the end of today, like that was what you said you were going to do. Obviously, not every day is going to be the same, and you are going to have to throw things to the side, but at least lean into the tools that exist, especially those AI tools that can help you implement into the next day and reschedule when you need to. Everybody's using different technology for a lot of different reasons, but you don't have to be perfect in this scenario. And nowhere does it say in the manual of life that everyone has got it all together. So give yourself a hug, let yourself lean into some of the tools that can be helpful to you, and know that not everyone has it all together all the time.
I think someone like Manon or other people that might struggle with this as well, something they also might be doing unconsciously is overcompensating, right? So they're performing extremely high at work, and then, like you were saying, that burns them out, so they don't have that energy to perform at home, right? So what are some ways that she can support herself in the workplace so she doesn't have to overcompensate as much?
I think as we're talking about that burnout mentality, I have absolutely experienced that myself. I mean, there were jobs that I worked in that I had to work so hard and I was overcompensating for so much that I physically couldn't get out of bed some days, because it was like I have to do another hard task and my entire day is filled with them. If that is the mentality, if that is the part that's stressing you out, you might be in this new job and you're showing up as that rock star. Doesn't necessarily mean that adjustments can't be made. And I would say, don't be afraid to say to your boss or to your manager, here's how my job is looking right now, and I'd like to make these tweaks, or I'm realizing that there are ways that we can do this differently. So what are those really, really big tasks that are overwhelming you? For me, when it came to the very hard tasks, it involved tons of reading, tons of responding to emails, and that is like number one mistake maker for me all the time. So I started implementing having things like Speechify in my work so that I had my emails were read to me. All of the documentation that I had to read through all the time were read to me. I took significant breaks when I was doing those tasks that were really hard so that I didn't have to use all of my energy and focus at that one time. I also brought in other people to see if I needed some editing, that I had another accountability partner to help me look over something that I knew I wasn't going to do the best version of myself. So I think you have to think about what is the absolute golden standard in terms of what's going to make sense for me today, and how can you break it down in a way that feels digestible for you in the moment. Also, you really want to check in with yourself because your energies are going to fluctuate every day. And you might have that rock star energy moment 2 or 3 days a week, but the other days, because you were so burnt out, you might not need the same type of hand-holding, or you might need more. So really checking in with yourself to say, what do I need in this moment to help me get through these tasks so that I can show up as my best self?
I love that. And I think some of this conversation also touches on what we were speaking about before, about how like neurodiversity and like learning disabilities are usually invisible, right? So like Manon and other people like her, they're at home suffering a little bit and nobody is seeing that, right? Because they're performing so well at work. So from the employer's or the manager's perspective, if they can't see what's going on at work or at home, like people are obviously not asking them to like be magicians and like see the unseen, right? So how can they like be proactive to address these things and create a more supportive work environment?
I think this really goes without saying in terms of understanding that everyone you work with is a whole person, that everyone has lives outside of their workspace that are bleeding into how they show up at work every day. So what are the things that your company and your organization and your environment is doing to really build in that level of need and support? Are you checking in with your employees regularly to say, like, how are you doing? I notice you haven't planned any PTO. I notice you've been working really late. Do you want us to adjust your hours on certain days? I realize that you've been getting ahead of all of this stuff. What can I do to kind of free up your time? I think what people don't understand is that 66% of people who are neurodiverse are really struggling with their jobs, with this burnout, and showing up and overcompensating in this way. And it's because they don't feel seen. All the tasks that they are doing that are really hard look seamless to the employee, look like they are not hard, and maybe they're even making it look like it's not that hard for them. But that doesn't mean that we ignore it entirely. So how, again, are you checking in with your employee to make sure that they are taking their allotted time to have breaks, to implement new systems that could be interesting to make everybody work more productive, smarter, and maybe even running some things in between that have nothing to do with work? I know there's all these things about having like happy hours and people do it after work and they get really frustrated. Like, I would like to go home. I would like to do this. I used to do something in my office, and everyone who's watching or listening is going to laugh at this. You know, I love coffee. I used to do something called coffee and cookie time in former offices. And I basically started a movement in my last job because at 3 o'clock when I was in that slump that I was constantly struggling to get through the end of the day, even just planning out what my next day was going to look like, I would round up people and be like, who wants coffee? Who wants a cookie? And we'd sit in the office and we'd like laugh and chat for like 15 minutes and we would just talk about anything else related. It gave me a chance to get to know my coworkers as people, get to know what they were working on, and maybe even help them with different tools that I knew about that they didn't know about. And it just kind of broke the ice. And with working from home, people say like, well, it's harder to do that. But I used to do this during COVID too, because I was still at that company, we would do virtual cookie time. And it was like a half-hour break to just like vent about all the things that were happening at home and just, again, be like real people. I think if you can find ways to bring people together to just remind you that you are working with people, that they have different dynamics, I think it really helps kind of ease that overcompensation and masking, because people can kind of take off their jacket and say like, all right, here's me.
This honestly is really impacting me as you're sharing this. So thank you. And you're reminding me of a time where we had bagel time at one of my former workplaces. And I didn't realize how much of an impact that had until you're sharing this right now. So thank you. So we kind of just covered now the perspective of the neurodiverse person who might be struggling, right? And the perspective of the employer who might not know that their employee is struggling. So how do you suggest we bridge this gap? And you just covered this a little bit, but I'm curious if you have any other suggestions, especially when it comes to educating yourself and advocacy and things like that.
I think when we're talking about how employees and employers can really show up for each other to really see as whole people and really feel supported and have the right work dynamic and environment to thrive, we have to celebrate the small wins. Because I can give you this example of my last job that I worked so hard. This was truly the hardest job I have ever had. The most impactful in my career, to be honest, but the hardest job I had ever had. And I would constantly come home and say to my husband, does anyone know how hard I'm working? Does anyone recognize all that I'm doing? And all I was hoping for was that people at the top would say, Alex, wow, I never thought about it this way. They didn't even sit down and acknowledge all of the work that I was doing because they didn't see it. And at the same time, I was like, you know what, Alex? That's also on you. You're not sharing with anybody all of the different thought processes that brought you to the place to be able to share this kind of information. You're not bringing them any insight to let them know why this could have been hard and not challenging, as opposed to having it be the other way around, because you didn't tell them what support would have looked like to make this easier. I didn't get to celebrate those small wins, and I had to take that internally, and sometimes it just didn't feel as satisfying. And I think if we are having conversations and just kind of laying it out for a minute and say, like, what are you most proud of yourself? But what are you noticing about some of the coworkers and the teams that you are doing? Because I think if we can create small bouts of recognition, it doesn't have to be like number one employee. I think all of that stuff can be, frankly, a little cheesy, especially when it doesn't come with any kind of promotion or any kind of raise in some way. But I think if we're having a one-on-one conversation to recognize, like, this was really helpful, thank you for your support on this, or this was really great, I'm so proud that you were able to do this, that goes a long way. That slight bit of motivation, that recognition, helps that burnout kind of dissipate a little bit, because they feel like their effort is being seen and heard.
Yeah, and learning about that person's experience and how they're experiencing work, right? Not just on the surface level. Like, besides those one-on-one conversations or maybe even group conversations, how can someone learn a bit more about the neurodiverse experience? I know it's broad, but
it's definitely broad, but I think, we've talked about before having those ERGs. I've sat in on a lot of different panels at companies talking about the neurodiverse experience in the workplace, and you don't know what you don't know, and you don't recognize anything that you can't see, and it's really hard to create empathy and layers of support and understanding people as a whole if you don't know what their story is. And I'm not saying that every example has to require somebody to share their entire story, but a little bit of insight to the fact that people think differently, that people need different levels of support, is not only making it a more inclusive environment, but it's also setting a safe space to be able to share what could work better, or what is another team doing that would be helpful to you. If we are having these kind of panels and open discussions and ERGs to have allyship, that kind of dynamic in these companies changes all of our conversations. And it's not just about neurodiversity. It comes in a multitude of type of resource groups that can put together materials and other training involved in the support system within your environment.
Thank you, Alex. I have really enjoyed this conversation. I've personally learned a lot and taken away a lot. I have some rapid fire questions for you. Are you ready for them?
Oh, yeah. Wait, hold on. I'm taking a sip of water. Let's go.
Okay, we talked about technology a little bit before, actually. So what's one app that you cannot live without? And I kind of have a feeling what you're going to say.
Ooh, an app that I can't live without. Do you want my real answer or you want the, fun answer?
Let's hear the real answer.
The real answer is, unfortunately, I've spent a lot of time on TikTok.
Okay.
I've spent a lot of time on TikTok, but not just to, find some fun videos. I've actually connected with a lot of people who have different learning disabilities and ADHD and getting to know what their challenges are. So I've been using it for research, not just fun recipes and things, but that's probably the one I've been looking at the most.
I thought, even technically it's not an app, I thought you were going to say Alexa for sure.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, you know what? I do
but she's
use
not
her.
An app, technically.
She is an app, actually, and she does send me texts and she does send me shortcuts and all those things. But yeah, in my home, that is definitely number one device I use.
Yeah. Okay, next question. What's a skill that you would love to master?
A skill I would love to master. Ooh. A skill I would love to master. Oh, can you believe it? You just stumped me. A skill?
Oh.
A skill I'd love to master. I'd love to master being good at cleaning. I am horrendous at cleaning. I am all of those videos that are people leave the cabinet doors open and the drawers open and you're from one end to the other. That is me while I'm cooking. My husband is so annoyed every time I cook. He's like, one pot? Really? Or is it 15 and all of the different devices? I would love to be able to figure out how to clean as I go and actually not be so messy all the time. That would be a great skill to learn.
Love it. Okay, last question. Okay, so picture this. You're going through a McDonald's drive-through, you're alone, it's quiet, it's perfect, it's bliss. What do you order?
I'm not a McDonald's person, but
oh no. Okay, so
I am a Wendy's.
What if it's Burger King?
No.
Okay,
it would have been Wendy's. Wendy's
okay.
Chicken nuggets. Chef kiss. I love those chicken nuggets. I would 100%, and definitely while I was pregnant, I did many runs to Wendy's drive-thru by myself with a giant Diet Coke because Fountain Diet Coke is it just hits different. So Wendy's chicken nuggets and Diet Coke would definitely do it.
Okay, I definitely agree about the Fountain Diet Coke. Definitely the supreme choice. However, I would say the chicken nuggets need to be at McDonald's and not at Wendy's.
I mean, fair. I do love chicken nuggets, though. Actually, someone told me they were going to buy their kid emotional support chicken nuggets, and I laughed, and then I realized that they were squishy, squishmallow, huggable chicken nuggets, and I was like, I need those too.
Not real chicken nuggets.
Not real chicken nuggets. They were the squishable kind, and it just made me laugh so much. But anyway, thank you, Carissa. Thank you for being here and always holding me accountable, but also asking me some really interesting questions to help keep everyone on pace. And thank you all for listening. If you're a neurodiverse adult navigating challenges in your career or a company looking to become more inclusive, then visit us at capableconsulting.com. To get in touch with us, email us at podcast@capableconsulting.com. Follow us on social media at I Am Capable, and don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you find your favorite shows. Thanks so much for joining, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much for watching and listening to the I Am Capable podcast. My mission is to make sure that with the right strategies, neurodiverse employees and their companies are able to increase productivity, improve communication, and create an environment where everyone feels valued. Through one-on-one coaching, I help neurodiverse professionals gain clarity, build confidence, and develop personalized tools to succeed at work. For companies, Capable Consulting offers custom workshops and trainings designed to help your teams better understand and support a dynamic, neurodiverse workforce. Whether you are navigating career shifts, college transitions, or you are looking for community through the ADHD Lounge, I'm here to help. Let's build a workplace where everyone can thrive. Visit capableconsulting.com to learn more and connect with me today.